All right, before we close out the show, let's talk about some fantasy impact players that you can maybe get on your waiver wire or even try to negotiate via a trade to help you and your fantasy football team out. We're going to start with the quarterbacks. Now, a lot of these guys are probably taken, so these might have to be some moves you make via trade, but they may be worth your time and consideration. First, we'll start with Justin Herbert. Now, you're thinking, well, Jim Harbaugh likes to run the football, yada, yada, yada. But guess what? I think in the very near future, Justin Herbert's going to let that thing fly. I think that Greg Roman understands that they're going to have to throw the football a little bit more, right? Gus Edwards has been injured, but Justin Herbert showed this past week against Denver that he can throw the football. Mind you, it was against a Denver Broncos team that was without Patrick Surtain throughout most of the game, but I still think that they're going to have to rely on Justin Herbert's arm at some point. So I think he's definitely worth a trade if you have a team that needs a quarterback. Maybe you don't have a really true number one quarterback. You just got a guy. He might be someone that may be a sleeper that you may want to go out and get a trade, or if he's available in the waiver wire, you want to pick him up. All right, next guy, we're going to stay out west with Matthew Stafford. Now you're probably thinking, Matthew Stafford, listen, I think they got an incredible matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders this upcoming week. The Raiders secondary is, for lack of a better term, trash. Okay. Now I know no Puka Nacua, still no Cooper Kupp, but Cooper Kupp should be getting healthy and be available here in the next couple of weeks or so. So that's really good news for anyone that wants to go and get Matthew Stafford. Look, I think for the most part, he's done okay. I mean, literally throwing to some random guys, right? So if you get Cooper Kupp back in the fold, he's going to get better. So he's one of those other guys, I think, that he might be stashed away on someone's roster right now. So you may want to approach that player and say, hey, listen up, man. You want to make a trade for Matthew Stafford? Because I think there is some potential good upside for him and his value. And I believe he's available too in a lot of leagues, at least 50 to 55% availability in most of these leagues between ESPN and Yahoo. So he's definitely worth a look there. All right. The last quarterback, Andy Dalton. And I know you're going to say, oh, well, he plays for the Panthers. I get that. But Andy Dalton is a veteran in this league, and he can still sling it, right? He had a touchdown this past weekend against the Atlanta Falcons to Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette. Not saying he's going to go throw for double-digit touchdowns every game, but I think he can move the ball in this matchup against the Commanders this week. The Commanders don't really have a great secondary. And they just lost Jonathan Allen for the rest of the year. They're talented defensive linemen. So guess what? That pass rush is going to be a little bit less toothless as they play each other this week. So I think there's a good possibility. Again, these are guys that I'm not going to say they're going to come and just win you the league, but maybe they can hold serve for you. Maybe you have a quarterback that's on a bye week or a quarterback that's injured. Whatever the case may be, you need some type of positive coming from your quarterback play. Andy Dalton, definitely one of those guys I think you consider going into week 7. All right, let's talk about running backs here. First one, Tyler Allgeier for the Atlanta Falcons. This one's interesting because he splits time with Bijan Robinson, which is crazy to me. But Tyler Allgeier is very talented. Now, he has taken a lot of production off of Bijan Robinson. So you Bijan Robinson fans out there, you're probably like, dang, man, like, what do I do, right? Because Tyler Allgeier is getting some goal line red zone chances as well. And he can catch the ball out of the backfield just as well as Bijan Robinson. So I feel like if you can grab a guy like this, you're getting a production from a number one guy who's really a number 2 guy in the offense there as far as running backs are concerned. So definitely, I don't think he's available in a lot of waiver wires, but again, another guy you maybe want to trade for. Another guy who might be available is Tyler Goodson. Jonathan Taylor, still no word on his availability going into next week here in week 7. Sermons was kind of the guy there. Really didn't perform well. I think he got outperformed by Tyler Goodson this past weekend. So I think he's a guy too that can catch the football, can run the football. So he's definitely worth your consideration this week as one of the running backs if you need a running back this week. Sean Tucker, stellar performance this week. Rushed for over 130 yards and a touchdown, and caught up a long pass for a touchdown, which he scored on. With Rachaad White out, it's going to be him and Bucky Irving. So I think there's some value in that. And I know he's available in damn near pretty much every fantasy league that there is right there. So if you are number 1 in the waiver wire, you need a running back, I would probably strongly consider Sean Tucker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if you can get in line and get him. I know a lot of people are going to be clamoring for him, kind of like what happened last week with Tyrone Tracy Jr., who had a stellar performance last week. So Sean Tucker is probably in that same boat this week moving forward. All right, wide receivers. Let's go head out west to Arizona, and let's talk about Michael Wilson from the Arizona Cardinals. Marvin Harrison Jr. may be out a couple weeks, so guess what? There's going to be some production that will kind of slide over to Michael Wilson there. So I can definitely see him stepping up, getting those number one targets between him and Trey McBride. Definitely a guy that you maybe want to consider if you're in one of those deep fantasy leagues. Michael Wilson, you might want to check him out. Christian Watson coming off an injury. If he's available, maybe via trade, maybe you want to go out and ask someone, maybe, hey, you want to trade for him? He's good. I would say Jordan Love is spreading the ball. I think it's fair to say that the Green Bay Packers probably have the most talented wide receiving group, right? I'm not talking about star power or anything like that, but just overall, like all these guys, it seems like every week there's one guy that just goes off for the Green Bay Packers, and Christian Watson may be one of those guys from a week-to-week basis. So you might want to think about staying along those lines with the Green Bay Packer wide receivers. Romeo Doubs, coming off suspension, had a really solid performance this past week. He's another guy you may want to continue to kind of monitor a little bit, but he missed some time. Jordan Love still rewarded him by giving him the production and the targets that you need, especially if you need another wide receiver. So as far as tight ends are concerned, Hunter Henry, well, listen, young quarterbacks tend to throw a lot to tight ends because it's kind of like a safety blanket. So Hunter Henry is definitely one of those vertical threats down the field. I think Drake May and him are going to develop a pretty good relationship. So if he's available on a waiver wire, you may want to go get him. I think Drake May is going to throw the ball to him tons this next coming weeks just to get comfortable. So I like Hunter Henry there. Here's a sleeper for you guys here. Jatavion Sanders for the Carolina Panthers. Listen, this guy can play. I paused for a second because I had to think about what I was going to say, but this guy can play, man. I think he's starting to get some nods from Andy Dalton, right? We know that they got Deontay Johnson, who's their legitimate number one wide receiver. Xavier Legette is a fantastic talent that they're going to continue to develop there. But I think this guy, Sanders, is legitimately one of the better, I won't say one of the better tight ends, but he's an up-and-coming kind of tight end. I get it. He's still young, but he's worth a pick. If you are desperate for a tight end and you don't have the assets to make a trade, I would say maybe go out and try to find this guy on the waiver wire, right? I don't think anyone's really talking about this guy, but you heard it here first on NFL Matchups. You may want to go and target this guy, especially if your tight end one is on a bye week. You may want to go and get this guy because I think they'll have some opportunities this week against the Washington Commanders, whose secondary really isn't that great. So I like Jatavion Sanders in this matchup for him this week. Now let's look at some defenses here. The bright spot defense, I think a lot of people are not thinking about. New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints have a favorable matchup against the Denver Broncos this week. I believe it's a Thursday night game. I think it is Thursday night. I believe it's a primetime game. I know that. Denver Broncos offense is not good. Bo Nix, although they've managed to win some games, Bo Nix really has not established himself as being a very consistent quarterback, which I get. He's a young guy. And what harder place to go and be productive and consistent is in New Orleans. I believe this game is in New Orleans against a team that can get after it, right? You know, they're a little stung right now. They've dropped 2 in a row, I believe, or 3 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. They're looking to get back on the winning side of things. I think this is a perfect matchup for their defense. So I like the Saints defense from even moving forward. I think they're one of the better defenses in the National Football League, but more particularly, again, if you are a guy or a player that needs a defense to hold you over until your number one defense comes back, Saints is definitely my certified stamp of approval this week against the Denver Broncos. Washington Commanders, I know I just talked about their secondary not being great, but listen, you're playing the Carolina Panthers at the end of the day. I think there may be some chances for them to get after the quarterback, maybe force Andy Dalton to some throws he doesn't want to make. So in that regard, I feel like that's again, this is it's a high risk, high reward type of situation with these next two defenses, and that's including the Washington Commanders. So they can be scored upon, but I think from a defense, they can score too. So again, if you're in a bind and you need some defense out there, I would probably go with the Commanders. And then finally, the Green Bay Packers, to me, now they got a matchup against the Texans, and this can go either way for them. But one thing I will say about Green Bay is that they do force a lot of takeaways. If you haven't heard of Xavier McKinney, this guy is a takeaway machine. I believe he's got like 5 interceptions the first 6 weeks of the season. So definitely they can do that. They can get after the quarterback as well. Although they're in a tough spot because the Texans offense can move the football. Now, Nico Collins is not there, so you got to worry about it. But Stephon Diggs stepped up pretty nicely. Tank Dell did pretty good. They're running the football with Joe Mixon, so there's an opportunity. Again, it's a 50-50, but if you are in a pinch, then you may need to plug a Packers or Commanders team in there for your defense. So there you have it. Those are my fantasy impacts of the week for week 7. Love them, like them, leave them. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section, and good luck to you guys.